Before we get started, quick question, because we accidentally swear like sailors all the time. Is there anyone here who's under, say, 15? So, anyway, thanks to all of you for coming to Video Game Romance, the stories we love and the lessons they teach. And I am Harris O'Malley. I'm known also online as Doctor NerdLove. I write for Patreon Doctor NerdLove, Kotaku, Daily Dot, a few other places.
And my name is Han Pan. I am the senior advisor to DragonFruit, which is a newly launched geek dating app, and I'm happy to talk to you all about it. And I'm also a giant cosplayer. I do a lot of cosplay. Woo! Yeah. I see where my cosplayers are. I don't need to ask for that. I'm located in the Mid-Atlantic area, so if you're ever like PAX or PAX Con, this is there. I talk about PAX a lot. Yay. I really like PAX. And I do a lot of time yelling about Nazi and Ace Journey.
And we also both tend to really enjoy overthinking, overanalyzing, and just really breaking down into like a lot of things we love about video games, especially since we're both kind of relationship nerds, how relationships in games work, what they do to us, and how much they actually map onto reality. And the history of it is kind of interesting because early on, games, extremely basic. You have a couple of squares, a couple of lines, not exactly a lot of room for characterization. You've got Atari games where your character is represented by a pair of blinking eyes. But as we get closer to like more advanced arcade games, and we start getting into the 8-bit era, we're seeing more developed concepts, more unique characters, and that is leading towards questions of, okay, so why are you doing this? Sometimes it's really easy, you want to save the world from the invading aliens, but other times it really comes down to, you get the hot chick at the end.
Or you get not a slave chick who you don't have to imagine to be really hot.
Yeah. Seriously, like, with King's Quest even, they straight up tell you, yeah, that was totally worth playing the game for.
Okay, if you can't read this, I literally need to read this. You tentatively embrace the beautiful girl. Your lips meet hers, and we're both in ecstasy. This was well worth playing the game. It's literally telling you this amazing kiss is the whole reason that you just played this entire game. They're not even trying to hide the fact that it's this basically, why are you doing this? Because sex happens.
And that shows up over and over again, especially in the classic games of the era. Donkey Kong, what are you doing? A giant monkey kidnapped your girlfriend. Go save her, because reasons.
Super Mario Brothers. A giant turtle being happy. Go save her, because reasons.
Legend of Zelda. A giant pig thing kidnapped a princess. Now you need to go collect 9 magic rat butts. Because reasons. This also continued into PC games, where presumably they have room to be a little more complex, a little more nuanced. So you get games like Dragon Quest, Dragon Slayer. Anything with dragons in the title? Princess got kidnapped by a thing. Go kill the thing. She'll love you for it.
Ladies, apparently the only thing we like is when things are being built for us. And I don't mean spiders.
King's Quest 2. What's the whole point of it? King Graham realizes, I need to get married. What do? I look in a magic mirror and I see a cutie. Now I've got to save her.
Which is never repeated again in King's Quest 6. Where his son looks in a magic mirror.
And of course, the whole reason is why does she, is she giving to charity in her time? Is she setting up hospitals? Is she a great ruler, a great partner?
Do you know anything about her at all?
Does she even have a personality?
Does she have a name?
Nope.
She's really hot. You hope.
Yeah, sometimes you kind of have to go by what the art on the side of the arcade cabinet. Maybe if you're really lucky, there was something in the instruction manual that they had some illustrations like, but yeah, princess at the end. Now, as for me, this was kind of frustrating because you were, as a girl gamer, you were playing these male characters, and it was like, if this is supposed to be me, I want something more than just me in the end. Like, I want to save the world. game started to mature, as the processing power got bigger, the memory got bigger, and the games got more complex, we started to see more interesting, more nuanced relationships, and it really started to make us care more for the characters. So, for example, how many of you have played either Ico or Shadows of the Colossus? Ico is one of the games that I absolutely love to show people who don't normally game, because I have seen people freak out over that. You have a young woman who doesn't speak your language, who you have to guide around through this castle. She is completely dependent on you, and for people who don't normally care at all for video games, they start yelling and screaming when you're about to make a jump and it looks like she's not going to make it, or when a shadow thing picks her up, or when walks off with her, and they're just sitting here thinking like, wait, why do I care about this so much? And it's just literally the relationship that builds up between Ico and Yorda. And then another great example of, game's caring potential is in the darkness of all things, where you're playing this hitman for the mafia, and the first 15 minutes of it is you and your girlfriend at her house having a date night, watching To Kill a Mockingbird together. And it's kind of amazing, because if you're sitting on the couch together, and if you just sit there and you don't do anything, you can literally watch the entire movie with your virtual girlfriend. And she even leans over, she puts her head on your shoulder, she falls asleep. It is such a little thing, but it makes you so invested in these two characters and what's going to happen to them.
And it really, when you're playing this character, for most people, you really put yourself in the position of the character that you're controlling. So when this character has deep relationships with other people that are meaningful relationships, it really gets you. Invested is a good word. It spends emotion. It spends your emotional capital to deal with these characters and the events of their lives.
And when you start having an increasing amount of connection to them, you have more control over it. It gets very interesting because you become invested. With games like Life is Strange or Dragon Age Origins, Dragon Age Inquisition, you have choices, and those choices are going to have consequences. And sometimes you don't know how they're going to play out.
In Life is Strange, for anyone who hasn't played, when you make a decision, you're able to rewind time and make a different decision. And no matter which choice you made, Max, the main character, afterwards was like, ooh, should I have done that? Maybe I should have done the other thing. So you're playing the game, and your own character is telling you, maybe you made the wrong choice. So then you rewind and try the other one, and you're like, what do I do?
And then, of course, spoilers, there are moments where they take that power to rewind things away from you. And then suddenly all those choices you've made have such a major impact, and you're left thinking, oh God, did I make the right ones? Is this about to, ruin something for me?
I was literally over today listening to somebody talk about Dragon Age and how it gives them such, have you ever heard of the concept of decision fatigue? So in the early morning, it's easier for you to make a decision about anything versus in the afternoon, because every decision you make takes a little bit off of your health bar. By the end of the day, you're at HP1, you're at HP to go to bed. This guy's talk was just going I can't play this game for very long, because every time I make a decision, I get so worked up, because it's such a major decision, and there was one part of the game where I had to make 6 major decisions in a row, and I was just freaking out. And this is the type of investment that you get in the game, not just with the character that you're playing, but also the characters around you who have the relationships with you as a human being, as well as you as this digital character.
And another interesting thing that they do with relationships. The relationships tell you who, if you're playing a specific character, instead of, say, playing Mass Effect, where you're playing your Shepard. If you're playing a specific one, the relationships start asking questions about who your character is. A great example of this is The Witcher 3, where Geralt is torn between two lovers, one who is very much represents one aspect of his personality, one who represents another. Which do you choose? How much of that is going to affect what your character does? And a lot of us pick partners because of who they represent in us. Do we pick someone who inspires us to be who we want to be, or do we pick someone who is more along the lines of who we actually are, and they resonate with us on that level. But the other thing that's great about relationships in video games, especially when we're talking about ones like the BioWare games, they make that story uniquely yours. Everyone who's played Mass Effect has their story of their Shepard and the characters they chose, and who lived, who died. That's going to be different for everybody.
Whether who do you romance?
Yeah.
Who do you sleep with first? Who do you not sleep with first?
If you choose a character in Mass Effect 1 and they survive, they're not going to be in Mass Effect 2. You stay true to them, or do you start up something with somebody else? Who you choose and why really defines your character and how it's all going to affect the world around you.
And I think this is a really good parallel to real life. When you think about a relationship that you have with someone and you meet their friends and their family, and you kind of have this whole part of your life that exists just because of this person, and then something happens and you're no longer together, you lose that whole part of your life. And I think that's something that people don't. You see it a lot more in video games than I think most people experience frequently.
Yeah, especially when you're playing games where if you screw up, if you make the wrong choice, you cut off that relationship, which we'll actually get to in a minute. One of the things I do like, though, is the way that relationships, I'm going to focus on the BioWare games because, to my mind, they do some of the best relationships in games, the way that they change the way that you perceive your story based on who you choose. Like in Mass Effect 2, you have the option of the doomed romance with Thane. He's like it's almost Victorian and Gothic, where he's got the space consumption. And instead of looking out over the moors, you're looking out over the glistening fields of the Citadel, listening to your own voice going, I'm Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite romance. Or you can choose in BioWare, in Dragon Age, you often choose someone who, like Meryl, is torn between two worlds, where she's trying to save her people, but at the same time is being dragged into this world of Hawk and trying to be more of a hero, and maybe she's making the wrong choices. Or you can go into almost any dating sim ever made and have to deal with the Ice Queen, who is so pretty and so above you, and if you just pick the right words, then maybe she'll love you forever, and then you'll be the king of the classroom.
I agree with this today. Come on.
And then, of course, there's always the option of hooking up with your space bro.
Bros.
Where we get interesting in relationships is the mechanics of how these relationships come across.
I think this is the part, this is really like the meat of what makes relationships in video games matter to us as human beings to play games.
Because it really comes down to whether they embrace the medium or whether they try to ape the medium of cinema. Because we end up with a lot of question of, are they going to tell us what's going on, or are they going to show it to us?
I mean, not all of it. Some of it.
So often in, say, the Final Fantasy games, you will have, if you have a relationship with a character, it is one that's more or less out of your control. You've got dialogue options, but they all end more or less in the same place. No matter what you choose, you're always going to end up with Yuna. Or you're going to end up having that scene with your characters in the sparkly Fern Gully water laughing at each other. Then on the other hand, we have another way of showing, instead of just flat out telling us, is they use contextual clues. Again, going back to Ico, this is a great area where they show over time how the relationship changes. At first, when you're using the save benches, Ico and Yorda sit next to each other, but there's a little space between them. They're relative strangers. But as the game continues, and they become more comfortable with one another, they start to relax, they start to actually invade each other's space a little bit more. They've become less strangers and more of, not even necessarily a couple, but they rely on each other. They are comfortable with each other.
I'm not gonna lie though, sort of PlayStation graphics, points to the game.
The tricky part in any game where if they're not just going to have the relationship proceed without your input at all, then becomes, okay, so how do we take a human emotion and quantify it? How do we gamify it?
How do we date Sims? Okay, so how many people read this as I caught you a delicious bass? How many people read this as I caught you a delicious base? Because I totally had this mental image of Link standing on the side of the pond, like calling on this enormous instrument.
Most every game that deals with romances where you have control has the relationship meter. Sometimes it's really obvious where you get games like Stardew Valley, Harvest Moon, Honey Paw, and it tells you overtly how things are going. You see the little heart, you see the little meter filling up, and that tells you what it's going. And it becomes interesting because, well, okay, so why do you fill it? Why do these people start to like you? And in a lot of the games we have here, it's very simple. It is, they have given things certain values, and if you give those things of that much value to a character, their relationship meter will fill up that much more. So you end up with games with gift-giving mechanics like Dragon Age Origins, where you can go and start giving the right gifts or the wrong gifts to somebody. So you go up to Morrigan and you hand her a dog bone, and she looks at you and goes, "Oh, thanks." Or you have games like Harvest Moon or Stardew Valley, where you just give them any random crap, and they love you for it. So you literally have a mechanic of, "Here, I gave you all these sticks, now love me."
So in Harvest Valley, some of the girls don't like some things. Typically, Anna doesn't like it when you give her flowers, and she gets mad at you, and I can actually decrease the relationship here. Some people really like it when you give them flowers. And then one of the things that I find frustrating about this particular example is that her card in the corner is like the, oh my god, super special, this is time to engagement with card marker. But at the same time, when you're playing the game, every time you interact with them, they go up a level on the relationship meter. They change the way they interact with you. And the little graphic that shows their larger face changes a little bit, and they become more friendly in the speech that they use. So to me, the heart system is really clunky because I think you could get the same effect without having to punch the user in the face. Hey, guess what? She likes you because you gave her stuff.
And of course, it doesn't always have to be giving things. Sometimes it's wearing the right outfits. A lot of games like Fable will change your attractiveness based on the outfits you wear. And so, of course, what are the best ways to win people's hearts? You wear a snazzy hat.
Bitches love.
Come on, there we go. Now, when you're filling up the romance meter with games like Baldur's Gate, Mass Effect, the first Mass Effect, Knights of the Old Republic, and most dating sims, instead of having something along the lines of, oh, you give them presents, you give them presents, you give them presents, instead it's all done through dialogue, where you talk to them between missions, and you have to pick the right conversational options. And this is one of the ones, as clunky as it can feel when you can't talk to them at any other time except when you're going into the belly of the ship or wandering around your campsite. I like this one a little bit more because it feels a bit more natural, because this is an area where they actually give you more, something that resembles real life more, because when you are spending more time with these people, when you are interacting with them more, and you're getting to know them better, they start to feel more comfortable with you, and they start to open up to you.
I think this is definitely one of the sections that reflects real life more, but that's not to say that people don't like to see religious aspect on that. Just, one that has thought behind it.
Yeah.
Just the same way that you think carefully when you're having a conversation with someone. You don't want to say something that's blatantly offensive, and you don't want to give a vegetarian a first soul.
And one of the things that's always interesting about these are the ways that sometimes you're getting, much like in real life, you're presented with an opportunity that seems like it's the right choice, but is actually going to make things harder for you in the long run. In Baldur's Gate 2, you have the option, if you romance the character Aerie, of sleeping with her relatively early in the interaction. And if you do choose it, that actually cuts off your relationship with her, because it happens at a moment where she's emotionally vulnerable. She's in this new, strange world, and you're her only guidepost. And so she feels like she's almost obligated to sleep with you.
Pro tip, don't sleep with someone who's emotionally vulnerable.
Mass Effect 2 does the same thing with Jack. If you choose the Renegade option early on in the romance tree with her, you hook up with her. And in her world, that makes you just another person like all the others she's ever dealt with. When, to an extent, what she really wants is a level of caring, a level of intimacy, not just somebody who thinks she's just there to fuck. Another interesting way of doing this is where they actually have you go on dates. Persona 3, Persona 4, Final Fantasy 7 even. You have the option of actually having a social life with these characters.
One of the things that I find really interesting about the gamification of dating and the romance theater is that people have created kind of like this almost cultish following of figuring out which way to fill the invisible need that works the best, whereas in Final Fantasy 7, if you just kind of play the game and pick whatever options, you generally go on a date with Paris when you get to the gold saucer. But if you do, like, if you ignore Paris completely and blow her off every time and pay Barrett to go on all your missions and give this to his daughter and stuff, and you go on a date with the big dude with the cat. And people have figured out exactly the conversation points of, like, this is when you have to do this is when you have to take that action in order to go on a date with this person. Even in a game that has nothing to do with romance in any way.
What are the words? Yeah, this is another area where games get very interesting, because it becomes a question of how much participation do you have in this relationship?
Or in selecting a relationship.
Where you'll get games when you're following a set storyline, like, say, Life is Strange, or any of the Final Fantasies, where it's going to always end the way that it was going to end. Or you have games like the BioWare games or Persona, where you have a lot of choice in the outcome. One of my kind of favorites is an indie game by Nina Freeman called Cybelle. I'm probably mispronouncing that horribly, where you're watching a relationship unfold by going through her emails and going through her desktop. And it's really fascinating and voyeuristic.
But you get this really intimate, behind-the-scenes look at a relationship and how it's developing. And I don't know, it always makes me feel really conflicted inside, because it does feel like really invasive that you're just like looking through somebody's stuff and you know. But it gives you this really personal look at this woman's life and the way that the relationship is developing with this person in her mind.
It's this really strange feeling of just totally invading someone's privacy and seeing these really intimate moments. And so you feel almost a little icky doing it, just as you're enjoying watching it happen. The interactivity comes from, playing the game for her as it is.
It's like watching a train wreck, just can't stop working.
And we get to games like Life is Strange, where we have pre-existing characters in Max and Chloe, but we control how their relationship unfolds and whether or not they even become lovers in the first place. We define whether or not that, Max, is she missing Chloe because she's having this sexual awakening, or is it this important person who's not in her life? And you have characters around her where you control their relationship as well. Are you going to accept Warren? Or are you going to reject him? Are you going to, how good of a friend are you going to be to Kate Marsh? Are you going to reject her? Are you going to get revenge on the bullies?
So I think this is actually an interesting game, because this is played from the perspective of a female character who is being pursued by a male character. And whenever I was watching Warren, who is a male character going after your protagonist, I always got this mildly squeaky feeling. Like, if he was coming at me, I would be like, okay, bro, we're going to stop texting. I can't do this. Like, this is my space bubble, you're in my space bubble.
He gets very nice guy
see somebody, you know, come up to you like, hey, I'm gonna hug you, and you very quickly say, no, you're not gonna hug me, and you go, okay, yeah, that's normal. You know, it gives you a really interesting perspective that something you haven't experienced before.
So now we're coming to the part that I find the most fascinating is which games are actually really accurate when it comes to the way that the relationship mechanics work, and which ones are the most applicable to real life.
And this is the part that gave me kind of uncomfortable feelings, because I'm sitting here going, gamification of relationships has to happen because games need a logical, quantifiable process in order to function. But I don't like thinking about relationships, which are these, you know, squeaky, soft, mushy things between people and feelings, and it's very intangible. I don't like thinking about it in quantifiable terms. But when you really start thinking about it, a lot of the quantifiable aspects that they use in figuring out how to build a romance theater and figuring out how to develop these relationships, they really do apply it in real life.
For example, the Persona series, all of these relationships develop over time. You are going to school, you're going through the school year, you're starting off as strangers with all these people, and the more time you spend with them, you watch that intimacy grow. You're becoming more comfortable with them. And especially since most of your love interests are the ones you're also fighting with, you're developing this bond that the two of you share that nobody else is going to have. And it's so much like your first love, where everybody's terrified, stuff is going on, nobody's entirely sure what's happening. They know that they're excited, they know that they're scared, they know what they want, they don't know if what they want is the right thing. And just everybody's kind of on this moment of like this edge of this could go amazingly well or it's going to destroy my life forever. And then also, like in real life, you have to balance things out. You cannot you have your social link system in Persona, unless you seriously gamify this thing and turn it into your job, you're going to neglect people because you cannot spend all your time with everybody all at once. And so, like in relationships, you prioritize who you're going to be with.
And an interesting antithesis to this is the game Wild Arms. They try really hard to, sometimes when you play JRPGs, you have this group of people that have never met before, they come together to form a party, and all of a sudden they're best friends and they love each other. And it's really unrealistic. Because you don't just meet somebody and suddenly you're BFFs, unless, like, sometimes there are those snowflakes where you're like, I didn't know you in a previous life. But in Wild Arms, they come together and they bicker with each other. They have no loyalty to each other. They're just trying to achieve a common short-term goal. Nothing really beyond that. And so they have no real hard feelings about when their crews split out. And the game was trying to make it as though the relationship builds and develops over time. Because later in the game, they do have some form of loyalty to each other. And they do want to achieve a common goal because it is the goal of their team. And they want to support their team as a person because they appreciate them. The problem is the game never had much development in between the we don't know each other stage and we're BFFs stage, which made it really hard. There was just a strange disconnect when you were playing a game, being like, okay, why are you suddenly crying over the fact that they're leaving? I feel like it was not that long ago that you didn't care that much. So the Persona games and some of the Final Fantasy games show you that the progression of the relationship, and they show you the time that you're spending with each other. That's not just the times when you're hanging out at the mall, or fighting inside the television, or hanging out around a campfire. And those are the small things that really build relationships.
Uncharted is one where I really like how the relationships progress, because they're like the relationship between Drake and Elena, it's complicated. They change, their relationship is constantly changing over and over again, because what brings them together isn't necessarily the things that are going to keep them together. There is a lot of that initial attraction. They're both very attractive people thrown into a stressful situation where they have to rely on each other, which is great for that instant connection, but their personalities clash a lot, which is why they keep getting together and breaking up, and getting together and breaking up. A lot of it is because Nathan just cannot be anything other than what he is. He is always running around doing things, and he always feels like he has to keep this a secret because he feels like this, he's got this thing going on, but he can't tell Elena because Elena will disapprove. Never mind that he doesn't bother asking her. Never mind that he never gives her a choice of saying like, oh yes, no, that's important, let us go do this. He just makes these decisions and runs off and then lies about it, often for no real reason.
So basically a cheat sheet for how to not have a relationship.
The fact that they love each other and just is not enough for that relationship to work. And they just keep on making the same mistakes over and over again.
It's a really important point to remember that absolutely applies to real life. Love does not conquer all. Love is part of building a relationship, which is like, 20% love, 80% really hard work.
Dragon Age Inquisition, of the most recent games, is the one that has a relationship system I love the most. Because you can't just pick any character, you can't just throw enough stuff at them until they love you. You have to be someone who they are going to be interested in the first place. Because different characters are simply going to have preferences that do not include you. Sarah is never going to go for a male character. Solas is never going to go for a non-elf. And these, just like in real life, there are going to be personality conflicts as well. Iron Bull, he may fuck anything that moves, but he's not going to have a relationship with someone who he doesn't respect or who doesn't have a matching personality with his. And the other thing that I like about the Inquisition is that these feel very lived-in, very experienced relationships because conflicts happen. With Sarah, if you're midway through the game, I'm going to spoil something for you. You find out about the elven gods and that they're real. And she has a very severe hang-up over elven culture and is basically kind of an atheist and doesn't want to believe in any of this. And she will break up with you if you aren't careful with how you handle the situation. Yeah.
That's funny. I saw at least 2 people playing yours.
The other thing I like is that, and this is a mechanic I think we both really kind of find knowing in games, is that sex or the kiss or the implication of happily ever after isn't the end. The relationship continues after you hook up.
And it's not the point of the game. It's not King's Quest 2, where glorious text and praise. The meaning of all your hard work. It feels like there's something greater to it than getting religious.
And so, taking a lot of what we've talked about here, how much of this can apply to really trying to find love in real life, and taking examples from specific games, like the Persona series? The time we spend with people, the social links we build with them, that mechanic does apply very well to real life, because we become more interested in the people we spend the most time with.
Oh, but granted, if you don't like someone and you spend a lot of time with them, I'm not going to start them.
Yeah, spending time with someone amplifies what you already feel for them initially. If you have someone who is in your life, whether they are a coworker, a student, a friend of a friend, who you can't stand, more often than not, being forced to spend more time with them is going to only increase how much you loathe them. Because now you have all these new reasons to hate them.
Everybody's got that one person in their friend group, right? Like, oh, you might love them, and you're just like, I can't stand this person.
I want to watch you die in a fire.
Okay, I like that. But I do want to know about his collar.
Shake you.
Yeah.
The other thing is that the shared experiences they have, in this case, fighting in a nightmare world and when midnight, that changes everything because it becomes very much you against the world. Went too far? All right. Well, that was the last one. That wasn't anyway. Tech, isn't it wonderful? In Dragon Age Inquisition, no matter what we've heard over and over again, opposites do not attract. We are drawn to the people who are similar to us because we like what is comfortable. We like the things about ourselves, and we want people who can relate to that. I mean, we've got the similar backgrounds. We've got the similar temperaments. We were talking about with Iron Bull. He is a very wild-heart, freedom-loving person. If you are too rigid, if you try to make him choose between his family, his chargers, and anything else, he'll do it, but he's not going to appreciate it. He's not going to like you for it. Yeah.
I mean, it's also not to say that people who are dissimilar don't have hope in a relationship. I love when people see me with my boyfriend for the first time because we are very different. He's very much like in the hard rock. He's this big, burly guy, big beard, and scary looking. Looks like he's got a chip on his shoulder. He's a giant teddy bear. That's all I do that. But you know, just because somebody's not exactly the same as you doesn't mean that there's no hope for a relationship either. I mean, look for somebody that complements you.
Going back to the Uncharted games, this one is an important one that people tend to neglect, is that exciting beats pleasant. Pleasant is nice, but pleasant is boring.
That's not to say that you have to go like
True.
bungee jumping, skydiving, doing crazy adventures all the time. It's exhausting.
But this is one of those areas where science has found that time spent as a couple doing exciting things that... Yeah, doing things that get you, especially if they get you physically excited. And like you said, it doesn't have to be diving out of airplanes. It can be hiking. It can be going dancing. It can be doing things that just you really both enjoy. It makes the couples significantly happier, and it leaves them more satisfied than just a night of sitting at home and watching Netflix again and arguing about what you're going to binge this time. And the reason for all this is because boredom is the death of relationships. Every relationship has its moments of where you've started running out of the novelty, where the honeymoon period is over and you've gotten to know these people on a very deep and intimate level. What else is left? Keeping that excitement, keeping the excitement in your life, keeps that feeling of falling in love alive the entire way through. It keeps you from settling down too far when the two of you have gotten together.
I mean, and some people, you know, everybody has a different spectrum of the type of excitement that they like and that they want to do on a regular basis. Because for some people, that excitement is, you know, going on a nice walk around the lake. And for some people, that excitement is bungee jumping and jumping out of airplanes.
And for the last one, is life is strange. And the biggest lesson, I think, taking out of this one is the idea that your partner gets you, that they understand you on this level where they know who you are, they know where you're coming from, even if they do not necessarily agree with it.
Or even if they don't understand you, but they support you.
Yeah. It increases this feeling of this person is on your side no matter what. They may not agree with you, but at least they understand you, that you can talk this out like reasonable people.
And I have another one in here too that we kind of talked about a little bit, which is I think that there is something to be said as well for the very basic idea of the gamified relationship, which is, you know, giving things and talking to people. Giving things to someone who's giving your time. Talking to people as someone who's asking how are you doing. But these are the types of things that really are the building blocks of a relationship.
Right. Now we wanted to know if you all had any questions, so we can have, if you do have any, we can have someone stand.
We're going to have
a human mic stand.
She's beauty, she's grace.
She will kick you in the face. Come on down the line. Line up, don't be scared. Yeah.
What are your thoughts with Master Chief and Cortana and the Halo series? How they get back and forth?
I think it's great. I don't do Xbox.
Okay. Because it becomes the whole like lovers who can't touch each other and sort of the meeting of the minds. But in terms of a lot of games, I've seen that done so many times. I kind of get bored with it. That's no fault of the game. It's just I've watched a lot of anime. Yeah. That comes.
Hi, first of all, thank you for your panel, and I'm curious who your favorite romance is in the Mass Effect series and who your favorite romance is in various Dragon Age games.
So I have not played Dragon Age, but with Mass Effect, I think it's always kind of weird because I find it to be really fun.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be Morgan say the same thing. When I played Mass Effect, I decided to go for maximum drama. So my Shepard romanced Ashley at first, and then realized he had to send her to die on Vermeer. And so he's left broken and alone until Tali comes into his life and heals his wounds.
Oh my.
How do you think the sort of meta level of the gamer's position as the controlling entity over the whole situation impacts the choice making and the whole deal about the relationships? The idea that, you know, we know who the romanceable characters are, and you're thinking, oh, I've got to do the nice things to try and get on this person's nice side because I'm trying to romance them, whereas in real life things often tend to happen more spontaneously, or you just think, oh, I like this person, or I don't like this person.
I have to say, if you were to think about someone as like, I'm going to romance this person, and then you go for it and it doesn't work out, that's what usually predicates the whole, I've been ransom, and that makes me really mad. Because sometimes, just not that into you. And I think sometimes that can be problematic in translating from video game experience to human life experience.
Yeah, the tricky part when you're translating it to real life is that in games there is a guaranteed way of making it happen. We haven't gotten to the point yet where we've got relationship games where there is going to be variables about how much someone does or doesn't like you. And when you try to treat reality as, like, I have done X, Y, and Z, therefore you should like me, you're gonna run into the hobnail boot of reality upside your head.
I'm sure people have heard the analogy, right? Like, people aren't around by machine, you put niceness into them until sex falls out, right? That's kind of what video games are doing here. I would really love to see a game where there's like this arbitrary variable in the system that just throws a wrench in the relationship. It doesn't happen every game, and it doesn't happen every character, and it's totally random, but then this character is something like, I saw you pet a cat. I don't like you anymore, or something.
Where you just introduce this personality conflict that only comes up midway through. Where you're just like, wait, you like that band? Oh, hell no.
It'll be called the Midwest syndrome.
You basically just answered that question.
What's your favorite obligatory romance? Like one that you don't get to choose who you're romancing?
I really like Final Fantasy IX, so it's actually all the way.
There was a game, the name of which is escaping me entirely, but almost nobody played it. It was an updated version of Journey to the West with Andy Serkis playing like 5 different roles. Enslaved. Yeah, I really liked how that one played out, just because the quality of the acting really sold the characters.
I'm terrified this question might reveal too much about me, but one of the things I really have liked in certain games is where I found that, like, I took a romance path that actually upset me or bothered me in some way, and I regretted it.
Emotionally?
Yeah, like the classic one I point to is like Anders in Dragon Age 2, where I'm like, oh my god, how did I end up with this guy? But like there have been other times, like Planescape Torment doesn't really have like a romance system, but like I was kind of flirting with Fall from Grace, and then like, oh, she's got more dialogue options. I'm going to keep asking her, and she's going to be like, I'm not really comfortable talking about the time I was kidnapped and abused. And I'm like, well, I guess I shouldn't have clicked all of the options. But I guess I'm just wondering, have you ever had that experience where like you learned something about yourself and you really appreciated when a game like pushed back on your unhealthy or dysfunctional behavior that it let you do and made you look at yourself and go, oh, maybe I shouldn't have returned the affection of the guy who is borderline suicidal and lives underground.
Maybe don't romance the guy who's about to do the Thetis version of 9/11. No, he's very cute, but he's also very damaged. And that's a bad thing.
I think it's an excellent point. I think it's one of the great things about games is that it lets you experience things that you never would experience otherwise, and then examine yourself and your emotional reactions to it. And in that way, I think games are an excellent, social instruction and self-reflection tool.
Yeah, I think the time, like in Dragon Age, the characters who, the guys who, men who were playing around and then realized how much they really liked Dorian's character and wanted to pursue that. And suddenly they're seeing perspectives on a romance that they might never have otherwise explored. And I think it would be interesting if we started seeing some games, especially romance-oriented ones, that really explored the relationships with people you might otherwise not consider. Like, what would it be like dating someone who has a severe handicap?
Before I ask my question, just to add to your comment about this desire for like this random element, you should totally do the game DragonFruit Extreme Beach Volleyball 2. Because you're not really pursuing relationships, you're pursuing friendships, I guess. But you could buy one of these girls like the most expensive bikini ever, just to do it now for away, and just really roll the dice on that one. So I don't know.
I mean, that's great.
But now suddenly you don't know anything about my taste? What the hell?
But anyway, my question is a reality in the pursuit of romance is rejection. And I feel like in video games, I haven't really been rejected all that much, save for one time in Mass Effect 2, where I tried to romance Samara. And she's just like, no matter what you say, no matter what you do, she's just not going to go for it. And that's the only time I can think of any character just not having that option available to them. Do you think games can do more to kind of bring light to this reality in romance?
Absolutely. I think that's definitely one of the shortcomings with romance in games. A lot of times, if your romance game doesn't succeed, it's not that you're actively turned down, but it's that certain path of the game never opens up, so certain actions going to happen. And you better have an opportunity to ask the blunt question and be turned down. And I think that's definitely a weakness in the romance element of video games that could be really helpful for people.
One of the things like about, say, Fallout 4, which I know a lot of people really appreciated, was the idea that you could romance just about anybody. And on the one hand, it is great seeing bi representation in games. On the other hand, it also was kind of lazy in that it made everybody open to you. And I really like seeing games where there are just people who are just not going to like you for whatever reason. It may not even be any fault of your own. It just may be like, no, I'm just not feeling it.
Thank you.
Hi, I was wondering if you had any comments about Fire Emblem Fates or other types of games that basically you play the god of this world as far as relationships go. You get to pick your spouse, and who you pair up together will produce children, and there's so many different combinations, and it just affects gameplay in such a huge way.
So what was the title of the game again?
Fire Emblem Fates.
Oh, okay. I think it's an interesting mechanic. Yeah, there does come a certain point where it's just kind of like, it feels almost like you're breeding Pokemon. Perfect soldier.
Because you can kind of choose to either pick the meta route where you pair this person with this person for the best possible child, or you can go with the relationship that you want and the relationship that you think is cute or you ship it. And I thought that was
I think it's a cool mechanic. I just haven't played many of the Fire Emblem games just because I'm not too much into like the Final Fantasy Tactics style.
I would probably play it, but I think I would start to feel like I'm playing Sims. Which is more okay because they don't really have personalities, I guess. Now I have to examine this.
So my question is a little bit more about relationships in general in games, not necessarily romantic in nature. Some of the relationships that I found myself most emotionally invested in were things like Never Alone, where there's that sort of intimate girl and the creature that she's running around with, or in Shadow of the Colossus, the protagonist and his horse.
Yes.
Or in Mass Effect, I wanted to just really, really get close to Garrus, even though he wasn't a relationship option. And then another game like Balda's Story, which is a little bit less known, but the two female principal characters can grow closer, even though they're like very conflicting at the beginning of the game through a common history that they end up sharing. How come we don't see more meaningful relationships of this nature? Like more meaningful relationships that are not like sexual or romantic in nature?
Yeah.
I find it disappointing, I do. And I think really, I don't know what we're going to call it a session. I'm so interested in the relationship between big daddies and little sisters and marriage patterns. And I feel like I don't have enough information. Like, I would play a game of just like the little sisters and big daddies because I can find their relationship that is like this symbiotic, supportive relationship that's really weird and twisted. But I find it to be really interesting for that reason.
Yeah, it's kind of like how we don't see. Well, it's kind of like how we don't see a lot of movies about, you know, brother-sister relationships or best friends. Most of the relationships in movies that get featured tend to be romantic ones, and that's just because they're easier, they're less messy, and there's an end point where you get married or you get together. Whereas with like a relationship between two best friends, it's not as narratively satisfying because you don't necessarily have a clear cutoff point where you can say, and they were bros happily ever after.
So interesting, though, on the movie point, if anybody saw the 2015 Cybelle movie, the relationship between Prince Charming and his father was one of the most amazing, like, parental-child relationships I had ever seen in a movie, and you've never seen that kind of deep emotional bond between a father and a son. And I found that to be really rewarding. It's definitely something I think should be explored more.
Veronica Mars did a great job with that too, with Veronica and her father Keith. That was probably my favorite relationship in the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So my question is kind of tangentially related to this topic. I actually met my current boyfriend of just slightly over a year through Final Fantasy 14 online. And I was wondering what your opinion of is like creating video games maybe that actually are geared towards people like trying to find relationships, especially in this day and age, like long distance relationships like I'm in are much easier to accomplish with things like Skype and texting and like having cell phones and just all that stuff. So like, what do you think the likelihood is that eventually we'll have games where that's kind of the whole purpose is like trying to help, through a video game, help people meet up and maybe form these real life relationships, and even if it's not just love, maybe even friendships and that kind of thing.
Honestly, I think we call that World of Warcraft. Yeah, I'm really not joking. A lot of people I know have met good lifelong friends through Warcraft, through Final Fantasy, through EverQuest. I mean, yeah, it's kind of amazing where if you spend time and get to know these people, the game kind of becomes secondary to you're hanging out with them and going on these quests and collecting war butts to turn in is the thing that you do while the two of you are hanging out.
I think though, I wonder about the romantic relationship aspect of it because something that we discussed is the whole, you know, if you're in a long distance relationship, the thing that makes them work is the end point. Like there's always a goal that you're working towards, a time where you're no longer going to be long distance. And I think a game that is built specifically to connect people for romantic purposes who are inherently going to be long distance and might not have that guaranteed end point. I'm not sure how that would work in real life.
Thank you.
Hi. So on the subject of not specifically romantic relationships, like you mentioned in Wild Arms, like the party relationship. I don't know if you've ever played Xenoblade Chronicles, but in that game, the party, like they start out kind of okay, cool with each other, but there's systems in it that with the player make them closer together, to sort of gamify their relationship like that, with giving gifts, but also spending time in battle, and that increases their affection, which like that in turn has an effect on the gameplay itself. Like it's all weaved together. And I just thought that was a really good example of that kind of system, where you get to see, and you know, like there's special cutscenes you can unlock. You get to see the relationship unfolding. So by the end, when they're all bros, you really feel like it came out of nowhere. And I guess I didn't really have a question. I just wanted to put that out there. See if you guys had any thoughts on that.
That's really cool. I'm also kind of looking forward to Final Fantasy 15 with like the bros. Yeah, going on the bro trip.
I think that works really well because people bond over events, people bond over shared experiences.
Yeah, that's a really cool mechanic. Thanks for letting us know about it.
Hi. So going on like the vein of like things like virtual reality and things like that becoming real, what do you guys think of like, there have been a couple debates in my college lectures about AIs and virtual reality and sort of making, not necessarily unhealthy relationships, but like unconventional relationships. It's like obviously the mind goes to Joker and Edie in Mass Effect, but that could very much be a reality soon. Do you guys think that video games have had an effect on people's like views of that kind of thing?
I think so. I think we're really starting to see, like, I mean, we can joke about people talking about my waifus or whatnot, but I think we've seen people getting genuinely attached to artificial characters. And I think we're starting to kind of, now that they're becoming more complex and more realistic, I think we're starting to see more of an acceptance of the idea that, you know, there may well be people who have an intense emotional connection to something that is not, I don't want to say real, but maybe not organic.
I worry a little bit about the concept of it because there is definitely a disconnect between experiencing something that an AI was built to behave a certain way and encourage certain behavior versus a human being who's not built to encourage certain behavior. I would worry about developing too much dependence on the virtual realm of like, encouraging a particular path and then expecting that from people and not getting it and potentially creating social problems. It's a really interesting concept.
There's also all kinds of really interesting questions to be raised with like AIs or characters like Samantha and Her, or the lifelike robots in Humanoids, whatever it is on sci-fi, where it becomes a question of, can they give legitimate consent if they've been programmed? If they are strictly code, can you reprogram them? And if so, is that going to be against the law because you are changing something fundamental about them? I could go on about that for hours, so we may have to go to the next question.
Hello, my question is,
If you have other questions you want to talk to, we will sit outside and help you guys.
Alright, I'm just like wondering, where do you see the future of romance in games going? Like what else can I guess they could be improved upon? What would you like to see?
I think we're seeing, I mean, we kind of went through a development of the complexity and the increase in complexity of video games, so I think we're just going to see more of that. I would love to see things where it's like, oh, we're going to wrench from it into plan that was not anticipated. I would love to see more exploration of the deep development of friendships and not necessarily romantic or intended to be sexual relationships.
I think a lot of the most interesting development is probably going to come from the indie scene, where they don't necessarily have to focus on commerciality. So, like, BioWare is known for their relationship. It's part of what makes them who they are, but it ultimately does have to come second to the mechanics of the game. So I think we're going to see some people who really want to explore relationships of all kinds. I think they're going to be making the really cool, maybe micro-budgeted indie games that we're going to be hearing about.
Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to know what drives you to be a dating coach?
That is a very long story that I can get into afterwards, but the short version of it is I wanted to put information out there that I wish I'd had when I'd been like younger and dumber and had no idea what I was doing.
Alright, so I have to ask this. Who do you main in Smash Bros?
Say that again?
Who do you main in Super Smash Bros?
I don't play Super Smash Bros. I mean,
So in Persona 4 on Valentine's Day, like if you romance multiple characters, like how quickly that can turn against you. So are there any situations similar to that, or how would you like to see that concept expanded upon in future games?
I would like to see that come up more often, and especially see characters who may be okay with it, and characters who are really not okay with it. Although I do think one of my favorite moments was in dealing with that situation was in Dragon Age 2, where if you are romancing Isabella, over the course of it, the elven assassin, whose name is escaping me at the moment, comes back. And thank you. And she starts like flirting with him outrageously, and the two of them are about to go off and hook up. The two of them are about to go hook up, and you can have your Isabella, I'm right here. And she looks back and goes, I didn't say you couldn't come with us.
Thank you. Now, I assume you're both familiar with Facade. You were talking about indie games where relationships are really...
That one is a new one on me. Tell me about it.
Oh, okay. Well, in Facade, and it's really, let's say graphics are not the point. You are the friend of a husband and wife whose relationship is basically in the process of ending. And so you can participate in whether the relationship ends, whether it doesn't end. You're just punching in text with a keyboard. It's a PC game, so it's freeform. Whatever you're typing in, I mean, of course, it's going to parse out and make decisions. But it's really interesting, and I would say that it might actually be that next level, which actually happened like 5 years ago. But my question was, now you know Facade, and I'm interested in whether, since you probably have a little bit more experience in these sorts of games, games with relationships, whether or not there are any games that really stand out to you on the opposite side of the relationship part. I think Skyrim, and this is a weird tangent, Skyrim is really interesting because you can have children. Granted, you adopt those children, but you can have children, you can get married, and the problem is, what makes it feel kind of stilted is there's not really a whole lot of interaction you can do with your husband and wife afterward, and your children basically are unrelated to anything.
I'll say that.
Okay.
That's one of the things I'm kind of sad that hasn't quite shown up in games yet, and I think that may just be a level of tech that we haven't reached yet.
I would disagree with that. I think it's because the game industry doesn't think anybody cares.
Oh, that too.
I really think that they see that part of the relationship being not interesting and to, I don't know,
Yeah, I mean, like in Fable, especially Fable 2 and Fable 3, you can have, you can get married, you can have kids, you can have lots of kids, and that's more or less the end of it. You can give gifts to your children, and yeah.
So we're all out